What's up, everyone? I hope you're doing fantastic today. It is Saturday, December 4th, 2021, and this is Raphael Garcia here for episode 103 of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. I want to say thank you for taking the time to check us out. As always, we always appreciate your support. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our content. First and foremost, you can always catch us over at MMA Ratings Net and .com. That is our flagship channels. And then you can also hit us up at MMA Ratings Net on both Instagram and Twitter. You can check us out across multiple podcast networks, including Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Overcast as well. If you go to YouTube, check us out there at MMA Ratings. Myself, get me up at rgarcia_sports. And again, thank you for everything that you do, supporting our content. You can find my content in multiple places, including MMA Ratings, Daily DDT, and Fansided. Those are the three platforms that I mainly do. I have something coming for you in 2022 as well today, but we're going to be talking about a couple different topics in professional wrestling this week, giving a preview of NXT WarGames, which is tomorrow's pay-per-view, and also talking about some of the major topics from across the wrestling industry from this past week. I know I've been out for the last couple. I think I missed 1 week's show just because I was ill last week and did not get a show out. However, we're back this week and just trying to do the best we can, remaining consistent. So let me see something really quickly before I hop into today's topics. Okay, so the first thing we're talking about today is WarGames, which is tomorrow. As we mentioned, that pay-per-view is going on. Tomorrow is the first pay-per-view outside of or as a part of the NXT 2.0 revamp. Notice it's not called a takeover. They've completely stopped using that terminology. But we have 5 matches set up for tomorrow, and it's definitely a old school versus new school feel for the show for the most part. We're going to be covering the main. Well, I'm not sure which one's going to be the main event, but we have 5 matches on the card. We're going to run through these, and how we usually do. I don't talk about the matches that I don't care about, but there is something of value in each one of these matches that I would like to cover. So the first one we're going to hit is the women's WarGames match, which is Raquel Gonzalez, Io Shirai, Cora Jade, and Kaylee Ray against Dakota Kai, Toxic Attraction, Mandy Rose, Gigi Dolan, and JC Jane. So I fully expect Team Dakota Kai. Just noticed that they got that. That's how they named it. But I expect Dakota Kai and Toxic Attraction to pick up the victory here. Mandy Rose and Gigi Dolan and JC Jane, they're basically being positioned as the featured act of the women's division. They have all the gold there. I feel like Kai's pretty much thrown into this group because she's the one that can work. Out of all 4 of them, Gigi Dolan can work as well too. She's a former Priscilla Kelly over on the independent circuit, so she definitely has some abilities to work there too. But Jane and Rose, kind of meh on both of them. So we'll see what their future really looks like, but I expect them fully to get their victory on Sunday. With the other team here, Shirai and Kaylee Ray are definitely the workers out of that group. Cora Jade is the young woman that they're trying to get over. I think she'll be able to get over pretty well in NXT. I would like to see more from her from a working standpoint, but she looks like she has what that brand is looking for when it comes to their revamped women's division. Then we got Raquel Gonzalez, who I think is headed to the main roster. There's nothing left for her to do in NXT right now. I figured that they already should have moved her up to the main roster, so they're a little bit late on that. But the main roster booking for the women's division on either show could use her if she's booked in a very positive fashion. I hope she's not denigrated in the way that Rhea Ripley was. She came out the gates hot, but that didn't work out so well for her for long-term wise, just because she's been under the Charlotte Flair shadow for an extended period of time. Now she's basically doing nothing as a tag team with Nikki Ash. So I hope that Raquel, when she gets called up, gets a better treatment, but we're long overdue for that. But this match is going to have a lot of high spots. It's going to be a lot of ridiculous stuff. Yeah, you can totally expect Shirai to jump off the top of the cage. I loved her spot from it. Was it last year, I believe, where she jumped off the cage with the trash can over her head and body. So we can expect more foolishness from her. I'm sure Kaylee Ray is going to do something ridiculous, and Dakota Kai probably will too. I don't expect the rest of the women to really kind of have too many big spots. I'm interested in seeing what Mandy Rose, what she's booked to do in this match and what that kind of looks like for her, because nobody is really nobody's really expecting that much from her. So let's kind of see what that really looks like. But like I said, I'm expecting Dakota Kai's squad to pick up the victory there. And I'm going to see where that goes from next. Cameron Grimes versus Duke Hudson in a hair versus hair match. It's been a very long time since we've seen a hair versus hair match on WWE television. I did not think of this prior to today's show, but I don't know when's the last time we've seen one of those in the WWE. The first thing I can think of is Donald Trump versus Vince McMahon when they had Bobby Lashley and Umaga competing for them, and Vince ended up getting his haircut. That may be the last time. I'll ask on wrestling Twitter tomorrow to kind of see, but I'm not sure when we've had another match like that in WWE. So that's an interesting, very interesting wrinkle. I expect Duke Hudson to get the win here. I think Cameron Grimes is another one who's probably going to get pushed up to the main roster. I can see him, unfortunately, getting caught up in an angle with Happy Corbin and Madcap Moss and all that foolishness. I can see something like that happening, but I do expect this to be a pretty solid match. I think Duke Hudson has some value. The Brandon Vink stuff wasn't doing it for me, especially when they almost put him with MVP. But this character, I could see it doing a little bit better here in NXT. It's not so appealing to me. But again, like I said, I think that it has some value in the revamp that they're trying to do there, and that's where he'll probably stay. Cameron Grimes is also main roster ready, in my opinion. The dude can work his ass off. He's a great character as well, too, so I expect to see him get called up sooner rather than later. I expect to see him lose this match, although I would love to see him with that longer hair gimmick. Him being his beard being better contained does look much better on him, but I expect him to see him lose and get his hair shaved on Sunday. But I do think a main roster call-up is in his future. Imperium versus Kyle O'Reilly and Von Wagner for the NXT Tag Team titles. This is such a weird match to me. I expect Imperium to win and keep the belts, and I think that we're going to see a split between Riley and Wagner, especially because Kyle O'Reilly's contract comes up either December or January. It's him, Kevin Owens, and Johnny Gargano. Those are the three big names whose rosters are coming up within the next couple of weeks, months. Gargano's actually already ended, but he extended it to work through WarGames, which is why I definitely expect his team to lose, but we'll get on to that in a second. But Kyle O'Reilly, he has no place in WWE as a whole, in my opinion. If he was to go to the main roster, he'll be booked like Ricochet, just be another guy. He'll be taking L's left and right, not getting over, or not getting the opportunity to get over. They literally pulled him out of the title picture and replaced him with Von Wagner and put him in his tag team. Again, Von is one of those guys who looks the part of what they want to push in NXT. It's just unfortunate that it's coming at KOR's. It's just unfortunate that it's coming at his expense. So now we have to watch very closely and see what his future looks like, because I think his future is definitely limited with WWE as a whole. Imperium, on the other hand, I think they're a hidden gem in the tag team division. I didn't like them at first. I was kind of iffy about the whole gimmick with Walter and all that, but these guys can work, and they've really kind of shown me that over the last year or so. And I like watching their tag team matches. They can definitely perform. So I'm expecting them to have a great match on Sunday. I'm looking at Imperium to keep the titles and go on an extended run. They'll probably end up facing MSK again in the near future. But those two guys, they deserve more respect, even more respect than what I gave them looking at their performance as a tag team. So I expect them to keep the tag team titles around their waist on Sunday. Then we're moving into Roderick Strong versus Joe Gacy. Now, this is a singles match for the NXT Cruiserweight Championship. There's a lot of different pieces to look at with this. First, there was the rumor that came out that there's talks about the Cruiserweight division being thrown out or done away with. And it's only been back for 5 years. So if you think about that, and then the fact that Gacy is well outside of the 205-pound weight class, and he's been calling it the all-inclusive championship, it really feels like Roderick Strong's going to lose that belt. Gacy's going to win it, and maybe they convert it to another mid-card title, or they just get rid of it in totality, which sucks. Especially because that title could have meant something if it was utilized properly over on 205 Live. Obviously, it wasn't. That show itself isn't utilized properly, but that's another conversation for another day. But I do expect them to pull the switcheroo, get the title on to Gacy, and then do away with it. Now, Joe Gacy is a whole nother conversation that really needs to happen. I wrote about him today and published a piece about Joe Gacy today about how his character isn't what it's not working. And what I mean by when I say it's not working is that it's highlighting the wrong things. It's not a character. Obviously, if you've been watching, you know that he's one of those guys that are using words like safe space, cancel culture, inclusivity, all those buzzwords that have been attributed to cancel culture or woke culture, whatever you may want to use those terms. But his character is meant to make fun of the people who those terms are meant to uplift or build awareness for. If we listen to the way that some politicians like Ron DeSantis or someone like Candace Owens or Ben Shapiro, Joe Rogan, some of those fools, the way they use those types of words, wokeness, cancel culture, Laura Ingram's great. She's another example as well too. If we listen to how those use those terms, they're using them as a denigrating adjective to other people. Usually people who are within marginalized groups or people who are pushing for some type of societal change or whatever that may be. And it's not a bad point to say that people do get too outraged across social media. We see it all the time. I get that piece of it, but that's not what's happening here. This gimmick is meant to make fun of the people who those terminologies are used to empower. If you think of it in any other fashion than that, I hate to say that you're wrong. The reason why I say that is because we know the people who are in the background making the decisions about these types of characters, and we know that group of people doesn't see the reality when it comes to how those terms are used and why that they're being used. So seeing Joe Gacy's character really is just like not it for me. He's a good worker. He's had a great run in other organizations, but this character just doesn't work for me. It's much like the Dan Lambert one in AEW. It's just another, in AEW, is old man yelling at the cloud. Here with Joe Gacy, it's Ben Shapiro like in a pro wrestling ring, making fun of people like me who push for social justice and equality across the board. So it's just not going to work for me. So this is a match that I'm going to watch, knowing that it's probably going to end with Gacy winning the title. The cruiserweight division is going away, and just more shenanigans on top of that. It's unfortunate, but that's the situation that we find ourselves in right now, especially with NXT as a whole kind of making that shift to bigger characters and bigger personalities. And it's an unfortunate thing. We always get something like this when it comes to stereotypical characters in professional wrestling. We're long overdue. So, yeah, it's just going to happen. And like I do when it comes on my TV more often than not, I turn or I go about doing something else. This is a pay-per-view, so I watch this match, but week to week, I don't pay any true attention to Joe Gacy when he's on my TV. And that brings us to the last match, which is another WarGames match, this time for the men. And we have listen to the names. There's Team Black and Gold and Team 2.0. So on Team Black and Gold, which is obviously a nod back to the NXT original colors that were black and gold back when Triple H was in charge, we have Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, Pete Dunne, and LA Knight against Team 2.0, Braun Breaker, Carmelo Hayes, Grayson Waller, and Tony D'Angelo. Trick Williams will be there too. I feel weird that Waller and D'Angelo are added here. They seem like they don't fit. I'm glad that D'Angelo's on our pay-per-view just because people love him so much. And it's good to see him getting more television time. But this feels like an odd placement in this match. However, I get what they're doing. Excuse me. They're clearly booking their younger individuals to overtake the older class. However, I saw someone mention this on Twitter, I think last week or maybe the week before, that it's such a WWE thing that they're booking all their new talent as heels because they struggle to get baby faces over, and they struggle to make interesting baby faces. They struggle to write interesting baby faces as well. That's a continuing trend that we see all across their brand. So here they have 4 individuals that they've kind of tabbed as the future of NXT, and in that essence, probably the future of WWE as a whole. And they made them all heels. So that's going to be something to pay close attention to in the future, because why do you want your fans to boo these people already? Like, why? That is something that has the potential to fire back on them, because people aren't going to suddenly start cheering heels like they did for Stone Cold and Becky Lynch. Those are different situations. You can't manufacture that the way that WWE tries so hard to, and this is another example of them doing so. I think it's going to blow up in their face, but I expect Team 2.0 to get the victory here, just like in the women's match. They're pushing for a younger performer to be on top, and I expect this to be Johnny Gargano's potential last match in NXT. And it sucks because, like, man, Pete Dunne is only 27 years old. That dude could really be the future of this brand and WWE as a whole, but they just don't look at him as such, man. Like, I'm pretty surprised that he still hasn't gotten his NXT title run yet. He had the NXT UK belt, but he's been well protected, well booked for the better part of the last 2 years, and yet he still hasn't been leveraged in the top name on a promotion yet. So that's something that's pretty interesting to see, and we'll see what happens coming out of Sunday's pay-per-view. Let's talk about some of the big news items from this week. For topic number 2 from the WWE, first and foremost is Brock Lesnar returns. He came back on Friday over on SmackDown, and he has some pretty good segments with Sami Zayn. And it's funny because a lot of people are saying, like, why didn't we get Brock Lesnar talking for himself for so long? He had Paul Heyman speaking for him for the last 8 years or so. And I get it. I understand why people have that feeling. I remember Brock Lesnar's promos when he was in the UFC and just some of the wild shit he would say. But Paul Heyman has done a good job as his mouthpiece, as his advocate here. But it's good to see that this iteration of Brock Lesnar is a little bit different. What's not different though is we're going right back to Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, and I don't care to see that so often. I wrote about this a few weeks back, that they being the WWE have booked themselves into a position where they're almost out of options. If you look at that roster, they should be able to create long-term storylines or decently timed storylines for Roman Reigns with names like Jeff Hardy, Xavier Woods, Ricochet, Drew McIntyre, so many others on that roster, but they have to go back to Brock Lesnar again. And this also points to the impact that all these roster cuts are having on the promotion, because you're starting to cut into the depth of what they can put on TV. And this is a clear example of that, because they have to go back to Brock. What else do they have for Roman outside of Brock? Especially as we head into WrestleMania season. We have the Royal Rumble next month at the end of January. We have Day 1 at the start of January. What do they have to really build towards when it comes to Roman for WrestleMania season next year? It seems like they are in a bad place when it comes to that. We can't go back to. I don't want to see another Brock versus Roman WrestleMania match. I feel like nobody wants to see that. If they all look exactly the same, I was interested in what they would do if, like, just from a character standpoint, if it was The Rock versus Roman Reigns, but it doesn't seem like they're getting that. What else could they? What else could they do? I don't see anyone from SmackDown winning the Royal Rumble from a men's standpoint because they don't have anyone that could be a viable contender. Jeff Hardy, okay, Jeff Hardy's 44 years old. Okay, so like he's in the latter part of his career. He's still hella over. Hardy will always be over. But what about someone younger? Like you have Drew there, who's not that much younger. Well, that's not true. I think Drew's almost like 10 years younger than him. But still, Drew's been in the title picture for the better part of the last 2 years. Okay, now what? Could they heat up someone like a Ricochet? Could they heat up an Xavier Woods? They were kind of doing that, but they're going back to the tag team division because him and Kofi are challenging for the tag team titles at day one. Okay, great. But what else could they do? Like Cesaro, nope. They don't want to book that. Or they did for a moment, but they went away from it. Sheamus, we've seen that. We don't need to see that again. We don't need to see Rich Holland. Like, what are they going to do from a booking standpoint? But they went back to Brock because that's what they have. Like that's it. In case of an emergency, smash his handle to get Brock Lesnar. That's just what they did. So he's back again, but this storyline doesn't really engage me. Like the Paul Heyman piece to it. Okay, the Paul Heyman piece does. It does have some interest there. It does have some opportunity for that. But overall, I just wish that they were doing something different. Becky Lynch versus Liv Morgan on Monday, and this is an opportunity to do something different, as I just mentioned, because they are doing a big women's match for the title on Raw. Now, will we get a clean finish? Highly doubt that. I don't expect Liv Morgan to win. I would be surprised if she did. It would be a huge victory. They could even do a situation where like she wins and then gets forced into a rematch at day one, and she loses the title there. Something. What I think we're going to get, though, is a non-finish. And then between now and day one, the remaining 3 weeks, we're just going to get rehashes of bullshit before they have their match again on day one. That's how WWE books. I saw a lot of people who were talking about Liv Morgan as this is the last opportunity for her, meaning that she is hot and cold when it comes to her perceived value in the promotion. There were a lot of individuals who looked at the 5-on-5 women's tag team match from Raw the week before as Liv did not perform well, and she's not building on the fan push that wanted to see her in this moment, which is an interesting conversation because I am one of those individuals who was like, yo, you have an opportunity to build Liv into someone interesting, and it doesn't seem like that's going to work quite now. It seems like she is, I don't want to say falling off the radar, but she's not as over as I thought she would be now that she's in this position. Part of that is WWE's problem because they just don't book people well. But another piece of that is her as a performer as well too. And let's see what this match with Becky Lynch looks like. If she can't shine here, if she can't look good coming out of that, there's going to be some people who push or who point to this and say, see, she's not a star and WWE needs to move away from her. Last news bit for WWE is the launching of their NIL program, Next in Line. And this is really interesting to me. It came out, I think, on Thursday. And I did some news covering it. So in their space, NIL means Next in Line. Now, to have a conversation about this, you got to take a further step back to the debate about the NCAA and paying college athletes. For the longest time, well, not forever, college athletes were unable to get paid. At the easiest level to understand this, it was presented as you're getting a free education, so getting paid outside of that tarnishes the sanctity of college athletics, where everyone's supposed to be amateurs. And if you are caught receiving any types of gifts or money, then you lost your eligibility, lost any awards that you had since then. The teams you were on could even lose their victories. You saw that with Reggie Bush and USC years ago. It was a real mess. However, everyone involved with these college athletes could make money. The biggest kind of scandal of which came around NCAA and their college basketball and college football games, which actually were made by EA Sports, which actually are no longer being made simply because athletes started to push back and say, hey, we want to be compensated because you're using our likeness. So instead of compensating the players, they said, we're not going to make these games anymore. Fast forward to July of 2021, and NCAA is getting pressured again heavily about this practice, which also greatly hinders Black and brown athletes. But that's another facet of this conversation for another day. However, in July of this year, they were pushed to fix it. So the NCAA announced this NIL program where college players can begin to get paid and sign contract deals for their likenesses. They're not getting paid necessarily to play, but they're getting financial deals using their likenesses. So think of it as Madden, for example. John Madden licensed his likeness to that EA game, thus he was getting paid for that contract and the success of that game. Same thing for college athletes now. They can license themselves and they can do different things with that. Bring now all the way around to WWE, and what does that mean? They are now saying that we are going to begin working with college athletes to further our talent development, growth, and bring in new potential stars in the future. This is fantastic to me. Gable Steveson is the first individual. He was drafted to Raw this year. They brought him out during SummerSlam. He won the Olympic gold in wrestling this year. Last minute ditch effort to win. Did he win a national title? I think he won a national title as well too. But he's going back to college this year to compete in wrestling again. After that, he's going to be moving over to WWE. I mean, this man wanted to do this in UFC. UFC didn't want to pay him. They wanted him to do they wanted him to fight on the regional scene before, but they didn't want to bring him directly in, which I think is stupid. But that's neither here nor there. That's the UFC's biggest business practices. He signed with the WWE to what I believe is a 3-year deal. I remember reading that. So this deal I think is important, and it's interesting because a lot of people were immediately mad online because obviously the WWE is moving away from looking at so many independent names that they were doing in the early days with NXT. So people are obviously upset. Oh, this means they're going to cut people, that they're not going to give people any chances, et cetera, et cetera. Look at the WWE roster and tell me how many college athletes do you find? Just off the top of my head, Brock Lesnar, Shelton Benjamin, Chad Gable, Kurt Angle, Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair, so many different athletes the Creed brothers who came in as athletes, but their foundation was furthered through college athletics, high school athletics, all the way through. They would be dumb. That is a talent development opportunity that I am glad that they came up with. Braun Breaker's another one. The Rock is another one. Roman Reigns. All these guys had college sports experience. So if they come into the WWE with that athleticism and that ability, I think that is a big plus to building stars in the future. Does it hinder what they may do as professional wrestlers? Oh, okay, no problem. I get that. This is another piece of that conversation between what's the difference between sports entertainment and professional wrestling. That's another piece that has to be kind of fleshed out as well when you talk about this. But the NIL program, Next in Line program, I think is a very good idea for them, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this produces in the future. So I'm going to hop over and talk about AEW next, and I wrote a piece this week about Bryan Danielson, and I actually put a poll up about it as well too. And I was kind of surprised at how one-sided the results were. But Hangman Adam Page and Bryan Danielson are competing against each other at AEW Winter is Coming on December 15th in 11 days for the AEW World Title. And I was looking at the tear that Brian has been on, and I was like, I want to see him as champion. And I want to see him as champion now. I do not think he's going to win. Let me go ahead and say that first. I fully expect him to lose to Adam Page. Page be the first person to beat him, and we go on another route. But I will personally say, maybe it's just because I love like the pro wrestling. I love that like that. I love what Danielson brings as a pro wrestler to all these matches. I am more interested in him as a champion, beating people up and competing and defending that title than I am for Hangman. I don't care what Hangman, at least off the top of my head right now, I don't care what Hangman does next with the world title. I don't want to see him in a back and forth with MJF if MJF beats CM Punk. I don't want to see him in a back and forth with CM Punk because I know that match is going to be as good. I wouldn't mind seeing Miro crush him and becoming champion, but I'm not too interested in what Hangman does next as champion. Danielson, on the other hand, there are some matches that I would love to see with a main event feel around him being a champion and others competing for that championship title. Could you imagine a match, Pac versus Bryan Danielson for the AEW World Title? Tell me that wouldn't be a candidate for match of the year, whatever year it happened. I don't see those same types of moments for me personally for Page right now. He's a great character. He's over as hell. When his music hits, people lose their mind, and I get that and I see that. But just right now, looking at what Danielson's been doing since moving over to AEW, I would love to see that title on him. And I was surprised because like 77% of people said that they want to see Page defeat him at Winter is Coming. And that kind of caught me off guard. It's like almost 150 votes or almost 200 votes or something like that, which is a small segment. But I was surprised that number was that one-sided. But I'm looking forward to that match. I'm looking forward to them. Bryan Danielson has been on a tear, and I love to see it. I wanted to talk about Sammy Guevara's TNT title run a little bit. He successfully defended the title last night against Tony Nese. Tony Nese looked good. Tony Nese is a signing that a lot of people are going back and forth about because I feel like a lot of people forget how good Tony Nese was in WWE. And towards the end of his run, he was just used as fodder. But Tony Nese can work. But him and Sammy Guevara had a good match. And I wanted to know, like, does this title, or does it both one and the same? Is Sammy Guevara's run elevating the TNT title for whoever holds it next, the same way Darby, Cody, and Miro did? And vice versa, does it feel like Sammy Guevara is being elevated? Because right now, it doesn't feel like that to me. I looked at his cage match, and he's defended the title. He won the title back in September 29th. And since then, he's defended the title against Bobby Fish, Ethan Page, Jay Lethal, and Tony Nese. This is past time. And those are okay wins, I say, with a air quote. But if you look at, and he's held the belt for like 60 some odd days. Miro, when he won it, he went right into defending it. He defended it against Dante Martin and Lance Archer that same month that he won the belt. Then in June, he defended it against Evil Uno and Brian Pillman Jr. Then in August, right up against Lee Johnson, Fuego del Sol. And then in September, it was Fuego again, Eddie Kingston, and then he loses the title. So it's not like a lot of big names as well there. But it feels different than what we see right now with Sammy, because Sammy won the belt like I said, in September, defended it twice in October, and once in November, and once so far in December. And he's still kind of caught up in a lot of the inner circle stuff. So let's see what really happens. That's why I always say free Sammy Guevara and free LAX, because this inner circle crap just doesn't work for me when it comes to them. But, they're going to keep doing what they're going to keep doing. But I really would like to hear what some people think about Sammy Guevara's title run so far. The biggest news for AEW this week is Big Swole. She has announced her departure from the promotion, and that really stood out to me. Obviously, because Swole is a big name, she's very popular, and she's very. Oops, that's bright. Let me turn that off. Swole is a very popular name in women's wrestling on the AEW roster. A lot of people wanted to see her in the title picture, which never occurred. And this was it was sudden. People know that she's had health issues with Crohn's disease. She hasn't been on television in a while. I think maybe the last time she was on. Well, no, she was on since All Out, but she hasn't been used frequently. And the way that it was explained via her statement, it made it seem like it was a mutual decision to split. Not sure what that means for the future of her career, but first and foremost, we wish her the best in her health and everything else that may have caused her to step away. It's sad that she never got that main event moment. She has a victory over Britt Baker that they never kind of had an opportunity to get back to. AEW needs to do something to highlight more Black women on their roster. Right now, they have Jade, who is on a run. She's probably going to be the first TBS title champion, but there's a lot of people who are like, I don't want to see that. They want the belt on Thunder Rosa, which I get because Thunder is my girl. But they need more. Like, they need to do something with the diversity of entirely, like the diversity and inclusion on their roster, and this is another example of it. I hope that they look at names like Trisha Dora, who are out there. Kiera Hogan, she's been in the promotion, but she's not signed. So let's see what they do to kind of rebound with this. Ember Moon's out there as well too. Let's see how they work around this, but they need to utilize the women on their roster and do it correctly. But it is sad to hear that Big Swole has left AEW and hope that she is doing the best that she possibly can right now. The last one I wanted to talk about was Terminus, which is a new promotion. This is my last topic of the day, or a new event. I'm not going to say they're a whole promotion or so, but Jonathan Gresham and Baron Black are the minds behind this, and their first showcase is set for January 16th in Atlanta. I'm going to try to go. That is right around the time that AEW is going to be here in DC as well too. Let me see. So the 16th is on a Sunday. I think AEW is here that week on the 19th. Plus, my birthday is a couple weeks after that. I'm maybe traveling to Puerto Rico, and I'm going to Mexico this month. So there's going to be a lot of traveling and stuff like that. It gets real expensive. So let's see. Hopefully, knock on wood, I might be able to make something happen. But Terminus is coming together, and it has quite a buzz going behind it. Right now, they've announced Bandito, Daniel Garcia, Shania Kai. She had a match against Cargill last night. Dante Caballero, can't say that name right. Alex Coughlin, Moose, Baron Black, Gresham, and Fred Yehi. Those are the names that are announced right now. The way Gresham was talking about it is it's going to be, I hear it's something like Bloodsport, which I'm a fan of. Let's see what they do. I'm always down for more professional wrestling that fits within my space within combat sports. I love that. And it's being run by two Black men. So let's see if that really kind of has a change on what we see in the industry. I'm wishing them the best of luck and the best of support right now too as well. But that is the end of today's episode of Let's Talk Wrestling. This is episode 103. And I'm Raphael Garcia. As always, you can find this show at MMAratings.net and .com in both spaces. MMA Ratings Net on Instagram and Twitter. Hit us up on Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, and Spotify. YouTube, MMA Ratings Net there as well too. Myself, rgarcia_sports. As always, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this content. I thank you for your continued support. Everyone, please have a fantastic and safe weekend.